because
How did
there
you
was a
know?
lot.
Of course.
And the main thing that came to my mind was that meme of Obama giving himself a medal.
Right, I see what you mean. Welcome everyone to OCHATO, the fortnightly podcast where we drink tea and review manga. I am Suellen.
I am Jade.
And I am Oliver.
Every 2 weeks, we pick a manga that one of us has recommended, and we read up to a certain chapter and discuss the manga with a mega ton of spoilers. This week, we are reading Blue Period by Tsubasa Yamaguchi, up to and including chapter 16, and that's volume 4, and it's recommended by me. But before diving in, we must know the important answer to a very important question. What is everyone drinking in their mugs?
What is that, Jade? That looks good.
That is a very good question. I have got from the Bird and Blend Tea Advent Calendar, which where I am on the 22nd day. It is the peppermint tea that they have, and it has peppermint leaves and cornflowers. But I like it because you can really see that the blue of the cornflowers really stands out, and it tastes good. It tastes just like normal peppermint, I think.
Ooh. Is it
my tongue?
That we're in January 2022 and it's no longer Christmas, just FYI.
That's true. The little tea like tag thing says "make it rain," but rain is in reindeer.
Cute.
Aww.
Yeah,
Love it. What are you drinking, Oliver?
Well, I have from the Bird and Blend Advent Calendar from the 22nd day, peppermint. I actually picked the exact same one.
Amazing.
It's nice. I like it a bit less than the Pucker Triple Mint, which is still just peak mint tea, but it is very nice peppermint tea. I'm enjoying it. I'm about half a sip in at the moment, as it's still very, very hot.
I tried to just take a huge swig right now, and it burnt my tongue.
Ah, foolish, Jade. Foolish.
I am also drinking the Bird and Blend Advent Calendar.
Tell me it's peppermint.
No, I'm drinking, it is Bird and Blend, but it's from last year's Christmas. Or March, I think. Blueberry pancake.
Oh, that one's good. I just finished up that one actually from the same year.
Oh, it smells very cakey. I love it.
I really like the Liquorlicious Licorice tea. It's really nice.
The what? Sorry?
The Liquorlicious Licorice tea.
Wow, that's quite a name.
It's quite a name. Basically, I walked in and I asked them, like, do you have any like non-caffeinated teas that are good for the stomach? And they suggested this one, and they said that like a lot of people, when they have hangovers, they come in and ask for this tea, and like it helps them feel much better. But it's just a nice tea to drink. So yeah,
agreed. That was in the Advent Calendar too, I think.
Which day?
I don't know, but it was very nice. I don't remember having it. I've got one left. However, there's also something else that we discuss on this podcast beyond tea, and that is manga.
Right. Yes. So we're reading Blue Period by Tsubasa Yamaguchi. So we follow the story of Yatora Yaguchi, a second year in high school. He's the embodiment of the motto, work hard and play harder. He's simultaneously one of the top students at his school, but also a pre-built delinquent from your daily high school starter kit. With the decision of picking a university, or aka we know it as picking where you're going to end up in life, apparently, at that stage in your life, looming above his head, he stumbled upon the joy of creating art and communicating his true feelings through painting. After coming down from the high of people praising his first ever artwork and learning that art requires hard work, just like academic subjects, he made a radical decision to pursue art for university, breaking his own painstakingly built academic persona, leaving his peers and teachers in confusion. So we now follow his journey in the strenuous work of improving his art and the joys and pains of being vulnerable through art. TLDR, art is hard. Ooh. So,
why was ooh necessary?
that was my personal interpretation of the story, you know.
I see.
I mean, to be fair, he makes the tense, not tense, but like the ooh face quite a lot. It's just like, you know, like the really excited, like, you know, he bites his own lips a little bit, or like, you know.
I can't do it. I'm trying to do it, but I can't.
So yeah, I'm not wrong in the ooh.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so what are our first impressions of this manga?
I came into it very neutral, actually. I knew exactly nothing about the Blue Period manga. So came into it from a very clean slate and ended up really enjoying the chapters that we read. It was, I thought, tastefully handled with regards to the characters. I like that it wasn't, you know, the cast was large enough that there were some people that I forgot, but also still to be, you know, they had enough different characters that it was interesting, but also small enough that I would remember the main characters. And then they didn't, I think, try and, should we say, milk the emotional highs too much for me. Sometimes I find that these kind of arty ones, there's a lot of like, oh, art is so beautiful, and then like single tear rolls down their face, and they pull that like once a chapter, and I'm like, there's just, you know, yes, it's cool, and yes, you're kind of finding your calling, but you know, it's maybe a little much. This, however, I thought handled it really nicely, and while there were still a couple of single tear moments, they were sporadically enough placed that I really liked them. What did you think, Jade?
Yeah, I came into this thinking, oh, you know, I don't know. I actually didn't know what to think about it at first, because I had been told that it was a manga about art and doing art. And, you know, inherently there's got to be some struggle there, because you've got to be bad first before you can be good. So I knew that there was like that whole, you know, journey of the artist. And I found the beginning quite interesting, because, you know, we're being given this delinquent type high school boy, and, you know, they play heavily on the fact that he is a delinquent at school, and, you know, he's just, you know, out smoking cigarettes with his friends and drinking and stuff. But I like the subversion that they did in this manga, and that he disturbs this delinquent stereotype, and that he's actually good at a lot of stuff like studying and, I guess, sports, from what I remember.
Yeah. So like a montage of things he's good at and people being surprised.
Yeah. But I like how, you know, he stumbles across that large painting, and like, I think that has got to be my favorite panel, the one where he's just awestruck just in front of the painting, because I think that's the moment where he realizes, and when we realize, that something's going to change, and that, you know, the delinquentness of this all is just very will get upset. Basically, the balance will get upset. So I really liked it. I thought it did a good job of introducing us, and also our MC into the art world. I like the cast of characters, and the actual art itself is amazing. So yeah, those are my first impressions. What about you, Suellen?
Yeah, I was sold on the premise initially of this manga about, you know, someone discovering art for the first time. I thought that would be quite an interesting journey to follow. I was actually kind of waiting for the English translation of it, and it finally did it, and I was like, yes, we can finally read it on this podcast. And it was nice to hear that, you know, there's an anime adaptation now. So when I first started reading it, I was really hooked on the premise, and it thought, you know, yeah, I agree with you, Jade. You know, it's interesting to follow a delinquent type character, but who's also knows how to be studious at the same time, knows the tricks. He just works hard, and he understands that, doesn't, you just need to follow the right formula and you'll get there. But then discovered the joys of art. I thought at first there was a lot of information dump about art, which I guess, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it made it a little bit hard to sort of get through it quickly. Like if you want to binge read it, it's like, I gotta do a lot of reading. But it is interesting to learn about it, because it does sort of, the mangaka keeps in mind that anyone could just pick up this and learn about art, just like Yaguchi, right? Because we're learning art through his perspective as well. So yeah, I came away with a lot of good art tips. My first impression is really hooked on the premise. You get to learn a lot about art, and at first there was a lot of information dumps, but I think afterwards, once you get the fundamentals down, they sort of string all the concepts along quite well, because you see him naturally progresses, improve his skills, and learn about new things along the way, rather than being like, here's art 101, you need to know this, and go create.
Yeah.
It's a journey. And yeah, so that's summary of my first impressions. I'm curious, before you sort of started, I guess, reading this manga, did you have any preconceptions about art or learning art? Because I think none of us here studied art for university.
Are you sure? I have proof otherwise. A hand-drawn card from Suellen.
You didn't get a furry card?
Oh my god.
Oh my
No.
god.
Is it just you, Jade?
There's a cat on my card saying Merry Christmas, Jade Summer. Like with the outstretched hand and everything. And I'm just like,
nice.
I tried to tailor to both of their tastes.
Oh, it's hitting close to home, Suellen.
Yeah.
Getting real.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep up the fan service for you guys. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. But to answer your question, I'd taken art lessons back in school, but other than that, and our occasional excursion to do like drawing after work in central London, no, I didn't really know anything. And so it was actually quite nice for me going and kind of like, hey, I remember doing this or this technique or learning about this. There's a scene fairly early on where Yaguchi is amazed by the really overly sharp pencils. And I had almost the exact same reaction the first time I saw it. I was like, why would you do that? It's perfectly sharp already. Do you just want to mess about with a knife? Only to then kind of figure out why. So it was fun kind of bringing back stuff from my past, I guess, for that. Ooh. What did you think?
Yeah, for me, I think previously, prior, I guess, to this manga, I just always never thought of art as something that, I'm interested in. I'm like, oh yeah, that's for, I'm kind of had the same perspective as Yaguchi or Yatora.
I think Yaguchi is his family name.
Okay.
Yatora being his.
Yatora. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I always just had the same perspective as him, oh, that's for, someone talented, whatever. Like, I didn't really care. But it wasn't until when I actually tried to do it myself, I'm like, okay, I get the hang of this. This is difficult, but it's, you take a few trial and error, you'll get it right. You'll get it right. Trying how to spin it positively. So I guess like my perspective slowly sort of changed as I like attempted it more and more. So like whereas Yaguchi learned it fairly quickly, because he has the same perspective that from everyone sees him as a genius, delinquent, in fact, but he knows it just you just got to work hard and you'll get through it, and it's the same as art. I guess now I will no longer have. I mean, my relationship with art is just you just gotta do it to get better. There's no other way around. There's no shortcut.
It's true.
Say. What about you, Jade?
I think mostly for me, art is just a very positive thing in my life. Like looking at art, making art, looking at, even art restoration videos on YouTube of like sort of old paintings that need to be like revarnished and stuff and retouched. Yeah, I'm like when you're talking about the pointy pencils, Ollie, it kind of like made me think about like the fact that it's so cool how an artist has just some tools, but that artist, they can then make like a plethora of things with those tools, using just their brain and some references maybe if they wanted to, but like it's just so amazing how like art comes from people. So I think I had more of like the way that this manga hits some very philosophical notes is very nice as well. What does art mean to people? What does art mean to society? What does it mean to history? How does it impact and affect culture? How does it create culture? And all of those questions just sort of pop up in the manga, and I think it is really nice to encounter that.
Agreed. You sound like you've been touched by this comic.
Oh yeah, touched deeply.
Yeah,
it's I actually really like the way that they handled the way that the characters kind of react to the art too. Two in particular I'd really like to talk about. One is, of course, Yaguchi, and the way that he kind of changes as a character, because he goes from essentially a studious person who happens to have basically the delinquent lifestyle as a hobby, which in theory could happen to anybody if you're in the right group or the wrong group, depending on your point of view. And then but I get the feeling almost that whole group is there doing that because they don't have anything that they're really passionate about, that they really want to do. And so you go to the default, let's drink, let's smoke, let's watch football, which is fine, but it's not exactly inspiring. But then the other character I'd really like to talk about is Koi Gakubo, who is the kind of angular featured member of Yatora's delinquent friends too, and how he is inspired by Yaguchi and goes from basically also being a delinquent to trying again at becoming, what was it, a pastry chef?
Yeah,
which
pastry school.
Yeah, and seeing that not only did Yaguchi's efforts then have a similar effect on his friends, but also that rather than being like, oh, they're not a good influence, I'm not going to talk to them anymore, that actually they're all still really nice people, and that they have their own kind of, or at least he's had a mini character arc and has, I would say, improved as a character from Yaguchi's influence, which I really liked because it made them, for me, a lot more human. And so rather than following that regular stereotype of delinquents, bad at everything, kind of bad-mannered, you can see why he, as somebody that does well in life, is still friends with them, and why these people remain friends and why they're not just kind of feared throughout school or whatever. So I really liked his friend group, but in particular Koi Gakubo. Were there any characters that stood out to you in particular?
The art teacher. I love her.
Do you mean Masako Saeki, who was the kind of art teacher at their school, or the one, or Mayu Oba, who's one?
Oh, actually, yeah, they were both art teachers, right? I love both of them. I love both of them. But yeah, I think they're such great mentors. They provide really good advice and guidance when they sometimes very cryptic. I mean, if I was given that advice, I'd go home and just be like, what were they trying to tell me?
Are bonds really strings to you?
Are we talking about chemical bonds? James Bond?
Yeah, like, yes. Electro bonds.
No, but I think that they played very central characters, because I think, I find art teachers to be, in general, I'm generalizing, I'm stereotyping, just they're quite open, a lot of them, from what I've observed. Like my art teachers at school were just always up for like trying new things, and like when you'd ask if this particular method would work, they'd be like, well, try it and see. And I find that there is this sort of freedom that comes with art that is shown through the people as well that do it, and who, in this case, like, teach it as well. So yeah, I really liked the art teachers.
Yeah, they're very cool. Strong, independent women.
Yes.
I love that bit. Oh, this is like a small thing, but when there's like a small comic strip about was it Sayaki sensei is very mysterious, and she's like, oh, you know what? Here's like four facts about me, and one of them is a lie. And it's like, oh, my fiance gave me a island as a proposal, and one of them is like he's a foreign national, or one of them's he's 20 years younger than me, and then one of them it's like I think something about him being rich or something, I don't know. And and they're just like, oh my god, she must have lived like a crazy life.
That's wild. Did you have a favorite character or one that stood out to you in particular, Suellen?
I think I really like Mori senpai. I don't know why. Mori senpai.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Because she's just I feel like we all have like a Mori senpai in our lives. Like we do, like for me it's like it's just someone, you see from afar, you're like, oh, they're like really nice but also really clever and doing like really well for themselves. I think she was quite cool. I really like the art that her character makes, and her idea of like, oh, like we put a little prayer in her in her art.
Apparently it was her birthday 3 days ago, according to
amazing. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I feel like if we had the tea award again with Blue Period, I'll be like, yeah, she'll be someone I'll have tea with.
She would be fun.
Yeah. And I think I don't know, I just want to touch on this since we're talking about characters, but the braided guy, Haruka Hashida, why does every, like, not every manga obviously, but like there's just this anime trope where there's always this one guy who's so passionate about something, it's like on the verge of like orgasm.
He seemed maybe a little too passionate about.
Yeah, he was just like, oh my god, they don't care about the materials you use, they care about the art you make. Why? There's also one guy in Yuri on Ice as well. I'm like, guys, chill. This is weird. Yeah.
It's a manga, right? They've got to have at least one character that's much too into it.
Yeah. So that kind of, because we were talking about how this manga is quite, realistic, and it's quite the characters are very human. And I got to that bit, I'm like, bruh, breaks the immersion.
I'd like to see where some of these characters go, because we've had a few that have been fairly transient so far.
Yeah.
But some of them surely are going to have more plot points coming up soon. Case in point, Ryuji Ayukawa, who was Yaguchi's cross-dressing friend, I believe was also the one that, when they had to do a self-portrait, just left an X. Was that correct?
Yeah.
And clearly has some, I guess, issues with how they see or how society perceives what they are, and how they deal with that. We've not had a huge amount on that so far in the manga, and I think it could be a really good plot device later on, and I'd like to see how they handle it.
Yeah, because when I was rereading it, I think the manga is quite good at sprinkling bits and pieces with having to deal with such a large amount of characters. So upon reread, you kind of pick up once again, like they're all building up, amounting to something that's going to resolve at some point. And I think for Yuka-chan, I think that's what they were referred to in the manga. I think, yeah, and they mentioned that the university that they applied to was something that their grandmother really liked, the type of art, Nihanga, or something. Yeah, so it'll be interesting, because I didn't know that they all had the same assignment like self-portrait. Was it a self-portrait that they had to do as well? Because I know Yaguchi had to for TUA, but yeah, that kind of shed some new light on that X. I just thought like they probably had a change of mind with the, doing a type of art because of someone they looked up to, really liked, and not following their own paths. But yeah, that definitely brings a new perspective. And also Yotasuke Takahashi, the one who's really tsundere about everything.
Yeah, maximum tsundere, my goodness.
Yeah. I love his expressions. Like, I think the mangaka captured his face of like disgust really well. Like, it's like absolute like
Yeah.
God, it's crazy. Yeah, I can't wait to sort of learn more about him because he seems like he's really dependent on art, and that's his like whole identity, and that's why he has the sort of from his side, from both sides, Yaguchi as well, a rivalry from him.
I reckon that it's currently a lot of rivalry, right? Like, and the whole thing about kind of a lot of sun, should we say, with Yaguchi. I reckon we'll get huge amounts of dere later.
Amazing. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's interesting characters to be sure. Are there any others that you'd particularly like to mention?
Yeah, I really like that. I think you were touched on this point previously, that they showed a lot of how different relationship with art, different characters, and the relationship with art. Because there's the typical person who's like, I'm going to be a doujinshi manga, or like I'm going to be illustrator, just draw bishojos. Thought that was quite funny. And also, I guess the next character that has like a big arc is the sister, right? The person who had a sister.
Yeah. Which is
Kuwana.
Yeah, I was gonna say her.
Yes,
Yeah.
Maki Kuwana.
Yeah, what did you think about her, Jade?
I liked her. I feel like she's trying to make her own space apart from what her sister's already done. Because, everyone knows that her sister got the top place in one of the exams, right? But the fact that she's trying to distance herself and trying to step away from that and, going, okay, I want to do this on my own terms. I really like that. I like her hair as well.
Her hair is great.
Yeah.
I think actually there's a lot of threads like that you can find at least somebody in this manga to relate to. And many of them don't also just follow the most basic tropes for what it is they do. I feel like we're getting much more kind of three-dimensional characters from all of them. So I mean, it's literally the first manga that we've read so far in 2022, but I'm already thinking it's going to be a strong contender for like best characters in general.
Yeah. So speaking of story threads, so of all the volumes we've read, it's majority of it is Yaguchi at the prep school, prepping for the entrance exams to Tokyo University of Arts. And we actually finish on the fact that he just completed his first entry exam with a really cool piece. Yeah, so I have some interesting questions about it. I saw Jade just left. Did you have any experience with prep schools?
No, I had some private tutoring,
like
very
one-on-one.
briefly. Yeah, like just a few weeks before secondary school, I think. But
what subject was it for?
It was for, I think, English. I'm not sure now. It was quite a while back. But no, I never did a prep school or a cram school or anything. Did you?
I did something for like English and also some science as well. I think I was testing out a few locations. So for like 2 weeks, at one point I had like 3 after school sort of cram places to go to. But I think at the end I settled for 2, one for mainly for English, one for English and science. That was I think during GCSE times, because I guess like English is my second language and just to be like, because GCSE is quite important here in the UK. So yeah, just to like make sure that I'm okay, everything's okay. I went for a couple of months, every week, going to these like cram places. And I think there are two different environments, actually, interesting enough. One, it's like you're just given tasks one-on-one, and a tutor just walks around checking up on you and mark the task. And the other is like you're in a classroom with like friends or people who are also at the school, and you have a teacher at the front. So I made some new friends out of it. We hung out a couple of times from that, but I think we lost contact because we didn't go to cram school again. But it was quite a chill environment. I think at the time it wasn't as intense because it's GCSEs, not quite entrance exams to university. But I do have reading this, I did have the nostalgia of like, oh, it's like evening and you're like after school you have to go to like a separate location, and by the time you get home it's like you can just go to sleep. But it's just kind of that late evening feeling. It's very nostalgic to me. How about you, Jade?
Are we talking about like after school activities and stuff?
Did you have any prep school, that sort of stuff?
Not prep school in particular, but so I did GCSE art, and a bunch of us used to, I think, stay behind after to like, I think, catch up with work and stuff, and we'd be able to go in at lunchtimes as well to continue working on our pieces and stuff. And it was really nice because you'd have this community where people would just come and draw. They'd just sit down and draw. You can talk, you can like put in your earphones and like just listen to music. And the art, I just remember the art room just being full of like sculptures. There was some like mannequins with like dresses on, maps and like sketchbooks all around. This whole section for paints and like this huge sink. So it was really nice. It was a really nice environment to be in. It was very comforting to know that other people were there with the same goal in mind as you had, which was wanting to do art. And then you'd wait for your parents to come pick you up because the school bus is already gone. But that's sort of the only thing I did that was like after school, at school.
Yeah.
Decent. Actually, now that you talk about it, I did do a lot of music after school things, but they weren't like cram school. They were more just, I played a lot of music, and to get the kind of, I guess, the good music extracurricular stuff, you'd need to go to the ones that compiled all the schools together to get the musicians.
Oh, nice.
Good times.
Yeah, nice. So it wasn't as like intense.
There was no pressure whatsoever. I played the trumpet since I was about 5, so it wasn't really like I was learning. It was more like I was using the skills along with everybody else to make music. So it was purely fun and never like a stressful activity. So very, very different kind of experience to what Yaguchi's had. Though I guess he did end up, it was interesting seeing him going from, really enjoying the art that he was doing at the start. And he had that very kind of wholesome but amateurish piece of just what he sees out of his window, which honestly was better than I could do by quite a wide way, as I've discovered. But then going to like just basically drawing a lot every day and kind of doing it because that's what he does in pursuit of his passion. There's a line that he says, which is, even though it's something that I really love doing, that doesn't mean I love doing it all the time. Not quite verbatim, but if you want to pursue your dreams, whatever it is, it's going to be hard work at some point. And he kind of realizes that. And then right near, just before the exam, of course, he kind of regains his passion for it and the enjoyment of doing art during, which is really nice to see.
And I think I really like how this manga also tried to explore, Yaguchi's journey, because he's always like, I can, he always goes from being like really happy from the praises for his artwork and goes back down to like, but I'm just a regular person. I can't compare to these people. I'm like really bad. that sort of thinking. And then, but then, of course, like the amazing mentors that he had always tried to push him back on track, saying, you shouldn't compare to other people. It's not fair. You should be aiming, for your best work, or to the work, to stuff like you were saying, how, you should stop thinking about, exam pieces, focus on having fun, like why you did art in the first place. It's not about, techniques. Sure, having good techniques does help, but, you still need that passion you originally had. Yeah, so I thought, it's a really nice message, to this manga is trying to say.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's the only way you're going to be able to continue doing something like this, because clearly Yaguchi could have done whatever he wanted really in life to some extent. He could have done STEM, he could have done literature, he could have done history, whatever, but he didn't really care about those. He wasn't super passionate. That was more just because it gives you that stability, whereas seeing him choosing something he really cares about and then really working for it, that's the only way you're going to make it through, surely.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really liked how the manga portrayed the listlessness and just the sort of how it portrayed the wandering of a high school student who doesn't know what they want to do with their life that much. When they're asked to fill in their university forms, was it? And for them, it's just a lot of thinking. And I remember, when I was a high school student, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So I really liked how they portrayed that as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad I don't have to think about entrance exams anymore.
It's a stressful period of time, but it can be fun in retrospect. Not for everybody, of course. It can be just stress for many.
Yeah.
But looking back on it now, it was definitely an intense period of life. And I think they do quite well capturing that. And also how Yaguchi's not stressed really about his regular exams, because he knows he'll do well, but also because he's found his passion. And I think as soon as he finishes his exam, he's like, yes, now I can go back to drawing.
And the other guy is like, no, this is not what you meant to feel after an exam.
Yeah. Should we talk about the artwork?
Yes.
Because there was a lot.
Of course.
And the main thing that came to my mind was that meme of Obama giving himself a medal.
Right. I see what you mean.
Don't get me wrong. It was excellent. And I really like how they show the different types of art style and how they show the different effects that things can have, when you do different tools. And clearly they've been using some of the techniques that they talk about in the drawing. I think this is maybe one of the instances in which manga can really excel, because rather than just having to kind of talk about the art that they're showing, they can show it and they can do these techniques on the paper for the manga, which broadly work really well. One notable exception being when they show the color wheel and it's just different shades of gray, because it's a black and white manga, and I'm like, well, maybe this didn't quite come across as intended. But I did really enjoy the art, and seeing not only Yaguchi improve, but seeing the mangaka / assistants clearly enjoying doing different techniques for this. Were there any pieces that stood out to you?
I think I still just like Yaguchi really liked the first angel painting that he saw by Mori Senpai. I think that's the one that stuck in my mind. Yeah.
I think I actually really like Yaguchi's first two paintings. Was it the blue one? I liked those because that was sort of his first foray into the world of art. And the realization that, realizing how it makes him feel as well through those two paintings and how other people perceive those two paintings as well. I thought it was great. The art in Blue Period conveys so much without really saying anything at different points of the manga. And you know how the art teachers were saying, like, art is a language without words, and it's a bit, they're absolutely right. It's so meta, because that both the art in the art and the art itself says so much about what's happening.
Agreed. And I often talk about show don't tell in manga, and I think that broadly speaking, Blue Period does this really well, they do talk about the techniques and about how you can express, I guess, different emotions or different things using various techniques. But they also show. And so, for example, there's the Yaguchi's piece on bonds, and his initial one with the string is shown, but it doesn't really get the center of attention that much. It's very much kind of, hey, here it is in kind of the upper third of the panel or something, without necessarily the full focus, which is quite a good way of showing Yaguchi's feelings on it and how everybody else feels about it. Whereas his later piece with the center of the furnace really pops out the screen, I thought, or out of the whatever you're reading it on. And I like that. You could tell that it was a piece that was just better, regardless of, whether or not you liked it more. And then following that, the people's reactions to it were better generally. And they didn't need to explain about what he'd done specifically that made it better, that made it different, because it was kind of evident from the artwork itself, which I was a big fan of. And I think that means it stops it being an info dump all the time, but it also stops them talking about things that just, aren't relevant. Because at some point you can only hear how the curves talk about somebody's changing attitude on whatever for so long, right, before it gets boring. And they have like one line, maybe two in this on that, which is enough. It gets the point across and then they move on, which I really like. It stops it being no substance and all talk.
Yeah, because I feel like you find that in shonen mangas a lot, where the protagonist does something and then everyone's like, oh my god, this young boy at his age achieving something of this level must be some kind of genius.
Yeah.
Like every chapter and every single time when the main character meets a new character.
Yeah, sort. Yeah. They show you why it's good as opposed to just having people talk it up all the time.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a shame where like, I guess the way like manga serialization works in these magazines is that you pick, I guess every month or weekly, how many they pick one of the mangas to be the front page, so they have color pages. But it's a shame they don't get to pick which panels in that particular chapter to be colored. It's always defaulted to the first few pages of that chapter, which I feel like it's a bit wasted. Not for this manga. I feel like for this manga, they took liberty on the cover of the chapters to be a double page spread, which were really nice to see. And I even screenshotted some of them just to so I can look at it again because it's so nice. But yeah, I feel like for other mangas, I've noticed some of the color pages, I'm just like, why is this colored? This doesn't need to be colored. Like, I would rather the other panels that are much more interesting.
Agreed
colored.
Strongly. I found I really liked the coloring style, especially what they did with the Yaguchi's hair and the strands of strokes of a paintbrush. I thought was gorgeous. But there were some particular panels that really could have used coloring. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Murata, who's been drawing One Punch Man, for by hand coloring one of his favorite panels for the manga release, which is incredible. One of the latest ones as of speaking. But yeah, I really like that they kind of almost change style when they color them in here. It's not just that they've had the manga panels and colored them. It's that these have been, one could say, painted.
If I knew more about art history, I'll probably be like, yeah, that's a shout out to Picasso or something, because some of the styles, you're like, that's probably a reference to. I noticed some of the reference to some of the paintings that I've seen, but I can't name those paintings. I'm like, I know which painting they're referencing, but I have no idea.
Yeah. Did they do that with Maki Kawana, the younger sister? I'm pretty sure, although I could be totally wrong here, that they referenced Touch of God or whatever it was, the one with human just about touching hands with God, and it was her and her sister, where her sister was in place of God,
Really?
but also slightly cut off screen, which I thought was a really nice way of showing that she's kind of out of reach.
I thought they were holding hands.
Well, they were, but only just, and the poses seemed similar enough, as well as the framing, that I was like, to me, this kind of screams out that she's only human and her sister's kind of ascended a level and is just totally out of reach, which I really liked. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, or if I've got completely the wrong idea, but it's a good reference.
Because they were talking about how, like, did you ever wish that someone never existed in your life? I'm like, whoa. I don't have a sibling that's competitive like that, but I can understand sentiment because I have friends, like, who are, I don't know, because you can't help yourself, right? As humans, you're like, I'm doing this, I'm like, oh, they're doing it better than me, or stuff like that. You just can't help yourself, but never to the extent of like being like, I wish you never existed. But yeah, I feel like that was a really good panel, and just like the character award in the future, I feel like art panel wise, Blue Period is going to have some strong contenders as well for me.
Agreed.
Perfect. I just have a question, I guess, maybe I'll save it for the end. You know what? I'll save it for the end.
Okay.
Welcome to a very special segment of our podcast. It's special because as far as I know, we're the only anime podcast that does this, where every episode we for the manga that we're reading, we bring a character or some characters, depending on the manga we've read, from the manga that we read previously on the previous episode to this manga that we're currently reading, to see how well they fare in this manga. So last time we read Nichijo.
Nice.
A comedy, a slice of life high school comedy manga. And we're bringing, I'm guessing, the trio.
I think there's a better choice here.
What?
I mean, if you want to say what you'd like to do with the trio, please do. I have a particular person in mind I'd really like to bring in.
I feel like the whole cast is, free, a fair game. You can bring anyone you want from the previous manga to this manga. Who would you pick, Ollie?
I'd bring Nano in, the robot. I think that not only would she maybe like discover a passion of hers and that kind of human side that maybe, she could have a more human perspective even than the regular humans, but also you could do some fun stuff with what, like the mechanics of her body, where she's got like a paintbrush holder and she's like, yes, thank you, scientist, you did it correctly this time. Because they have that whole section in Blue Period where Yaguchi's learning about the different tools that artists can use, and I think Nano could have some really interesting examples that she could bust out there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
She's like, I've got a toaster in my arm today, let's try burning a bit of the page. That's art.
Or using like burnt breadcrumbs.
Exactly.
And,
I think she'd be a really interesting person to bring into this, and I'd love to see the art that she could make.
Nice. Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to bring in Mio so she can further develop her BL manga.
I was thinking about her as well. I was like, what's her name again? Yep. Go on.
Yeah, I want it, full canvas. Like, I want 240 pages. I want like 6 volumes.
I feel like she'd be the kind of character that like would be really mediocre at most of it, but then as soon as they're like, okay, you need to draw like a comic thing, and she'd be like, I've absolutely got this, and everybody would be in awe of whatever it is that she's drawn.
Yeah, I feel like she would fare really well with the girls at the art club. And I think, what's her name, Mai, the glasses girl. Yeah, I feel like, you know what, I feel like she could go on a similar journey as Yaguchi, because she's also quite studious. I mean, I haven't read enough of Nichijo to know of her character, other than that she can be mischievous. But maybe she also discovers a passion in art and becomes a rival to Yaguchi. Yeah, actually, when you were talking about Nano, Ollie, I think, the different tools, it made me think, it would be interesting to explore how like a person who's disabled, how would they approach art? Because, other than hands, there has been, using the mouth or the feet even to approach art. I feel like it'll be quite interesting if at all this manga to see some representation of that. That would be cool. But I feel like I'm asking too much. But okay, yeah, anyone could do art, literally. Yeah, I feel like with the Nano one, I could also see that there will be some, other than funny gags, I feel like she could go for like a whole character art with her discovering herself, like maybe being a robot doesn't matter when it comes to art.
Yeah, exactly. That's just what I was thinking. It would be really interesting, a little arc of her own.
Yeah, like accepting her identity as well. Maybe she'll have a self-discovery arc as well.
I hope we get something similar with Ryuji Ayukawa, and seeing how they see themselves, and maybe if they can get their parents to accept them as well.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know. It seems like at least they're supportive of the artistic pursuit. We haven't seen much. We only had like a couple of dialogues from the dad and the grandma, but we'll see.
Indeed, we shall.
Yes. So this has been Blue Period. So do we have any final thoughts on the manga that we'd like to wrap it all up?
I think it's a great manga. It exceeded all my expectations of what I thought it was going to be. I like the character development that we've seen. I like that Yaguchi can find space to apologize to people and grow and learn a lot of things. And I'm really excited to read more of Blue Period and to also watch the anime as well. And I think in my mind it's a bit like Space Brothers.
Ooh.
But yeah.
Hey, you gotta expand on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's like starting from a base where you're not that satisfied in life to like really finding your passion for something and really reaching for that goal in your head and just staying true to yourself. I think that's why I think the two are alike.
Awesome.
Yeah, good parallel. What about you, Ollie?
For my part, I really enjoyed Blue Period a lot more than necessarily I thought I would. The subject matter itself, that being art, is very flexible as a medium, but isn't as maybe compelling as something like, love or war or whatever. But the characters in Blue Period are fantastic. They're all really well developed. They feel, I would say, realistic, which is important for a setting like this. And they feel like they have depth. So I've been really enjoying reading this, and I'm certainly going to continue. What do you think, Suellen?
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed this. I really like the, we're following the emotional journey of a person who's discovering their passion, but also it comes with a cost. It's difficult and it's beginner, and also it's a saturated field, I guess. There are a lot of people also like you, and how to sort of separate from seeing these people as someone you learn from to just, rivalries. What's the healthiest mentality to tackle this. So I feel like it's a art shonen, but without the typical shonen tropes, I guess.
Yeah,
it does make you fire up. You're like rooting for them, but it doesn't got the the overly tropey ways of this person is a genius. We must bow down at his supremacy. Yeah, I would recommend it with anyone who's, even if you have no knowledge of art, you actually learn a few things from it.
Indeed.
I have one last question just to wrap it all up. Did this manga convince you to do more art?
Yes.
That was a succinct answer, Jade. I'm not sure. I'd certainly be more game to do it. We were doing some art in kind of central London after work, just as a fun thing to meet up previously. So it was nice kind of reflecting upon that. I don't think I'm willing to necessarily commit the time to get good enough that I'm happy with my art, but I think I would be more receptive to doing just some art anyway. So yes, is my answer.
And yes, that's the yes from me too. Amazing.
You're through to the next round.
But is Yaguchi, how could we stop on chapter 16 just before we find out the result?
We'll have to come back to this for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Look forward to part 2 of this manga. Comments down below if you'd like to see more.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of OCHATO.
Next week we are reading.
Oh
Naruto.
shit!
Okay,
I
cut.
totally forgot. Okay, go again. I'm ashamed.
Oh. Well, thanks for listening to this episode.
What are we reading next week?
I wonder, what are we reading next week? Could it be
Don't
One
mind me.
Piece?
So next week we are reading Naruto by Masashi Kishimoto. This is, for me, close to my heart. It's one of the first manga that I read, and we're
Aw.
reading up to chapter 36. You can find it in Shonen Jump or probably Viz as well, which is, I think, the same thing online.
Nice. I'm excited to read it. Thank
Pretty
you.
good. One of the big three of shonen from a while back.
Thank you for listening to this episode of OCHATO.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy our content. See you next week.
Woo!
Next week.
I know what you mean.
Woo! Woo!
One day we'll get
We did it.
get a coherent outro.
It's too much. Okay.